Mike Carter thought his drive through the mountains would be just another night of fighting cold and exhaustion. A retired firefighter with nothing left but his rusted pickup and his loyal dog, Buddy. But when the blizzard swallowed the road, Buddy began barking wildly, pulling him toward the woods, as if something unseen was calling from the storm. There, half buried in snow, they found an old cabin, smoke rising from its chimney, though no footprints led inside. On the table waited a loaf of warm bread and a handwritten note that read, "If you're cold, this place is home. A friend." Mike didn't know it yet, but that one night of shelter would spark a chain of miracles. Strangers saved, kindness reborn, and a town forever changed by a fire that never died. What happens next will warm your heart, make you believe in goodness again, and remind you that maybe God still walks among us, one act of compassion at a time. Before we begin, please support us by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a comment below. Your kindness helps keep this fire alive. Chapter 1. The Firefighter and the Strange Winter. The mountains slept under a white silence, the kind that swallows sound and memory alike. Snow fell in slow, heavy flakes, each one glinting like a shard of forgotten light. The old truck wheezed its last breath halfway up the ridge, the engine coughing once before dying into the storm's howling throat. Mike Carter sat behind the wheel, hands trembling not from fear but from cold that seeped into bone. He was 53, broad-shouldered, but thinned by hard years. His hair, once the color of copper sparks, was now iron gray, and his beard carried the uneven texture of someone who stopped caring how it looked. There was a quiet sadness in his blue eyes, eyes that had seen too much smoke and loss to ever be truly at rest. He had been a firefighter for almost 3 decades, the kind who never left a man behind, not even when the roof groaned and the flames screamed. But that was before the accident 2 years ago, the one that left his partner trapped, and him with a guilt that never cooled. "Guess she's done," he muttered, patting the cracked dashboard. The heater had long given up, and frost crawled along the inside of the windshield like a slow infection. In the passenger seat, Buddy lifted his head. The golden retriever, 6 years old, fur-dusted with gray like his master, stared at Mike with intelligent amber eyes. His coat was thick and matted from travel, and one ear bent at a permanent angle, the result of a puppyhood adventure involving a fence and poor judgment. Loyal to a fault, Buddy had been with Mike since the worst night of his life, the night the fire took his friend. After the department sent Mike home with a handshake and early pension, it was Buddy who made sure the silence didn't swallow him whole. Mike opened the truck door, and the wind slammed against him like an old rival. "All right, boy," he said, voice muffled through his scarf. "Let's find some place before we freeze." They trudged through knee-deep snow, the world reduced to white and gray. The road had disappeared under the storm, and trees loomed like watchful ghosts. Buddy stayed close, his breath puffing small clouds, nose twitching at the air. Every few steps, he stopped, sniffed, then looked back as if urging Mike to trust him. Mike's legs burned from exhaustion. He'd been walking since morning after the truck sputtered out. The last thing he remembered eating was a granola bar at dawn and half a thermos of coffee now frozen solid. His gloves were soaked, his fingers numb, and yet, somewhere under the fatigue, there was that stubborn ember inside him, the one that refused to die, the one that had carried him through burning buildings and funerals. "Buddy," he said, kneeling in the snow, "if this is how we go, at least we go together, huh?" But Buddy barked once, sharp and insistent, then turned his head toward the wind. His tail stiffened. Mike frowned. "What is it?" Then he smelled it too, just a whisper of wood smoke, not old ash, but the warm, sweet scent of burning pine. He straightened. No way. The nearest town was 20 miles behind them. There shouldn't be smoke here. Buddy started forward, weaving between snow-laden trees. Mike followed, heart hammering despite the cold. The scent grew stronger, leading them up a narrow path that wound between 2 pines and opened suddenly onto a small clearing. There it was. A cabin. Wooden, small, leaning a little to one side, but undeniably real. Smoke curled from the chimney, thin and steady. Through the frosted window, he thought he saw a flicker of orange light. For a moment, he didn't move. The sight of it hit him like a memory. Nights by the firehouse stove, wet boots drying, laughter echoing against concrete walls. He swallowed hard. "You seeing this too, Bud?" Buddy wagged his tail once, snow spraying from his fur. Mike approached slowly, every instinct split between caution and hope. The snow around the cabin was undisturbed. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. The place looked lived in, but untouched. He brushed snow off the door handle. It turned easily. Inside, warm air wrapped around him like a forgotten embrace. The faint crackle of fire filled the silence. A small wood stove glowed in the corner, and a kettle hissed softly atop it. On the table sat a loaf of bread, still warm, its crust golden and fragrant. Mike froze in the doorway. "Hello?" His voice sounded foreign, like it belonged to someone else. No answer, only the rhythmic pop of burning wood. He stepped inside, closing the door against the cold. The cabin was tidy, one bed neatly made, shelves lined with jars of beans, flour, salt, 2 bowls, 2 spoons. A lantern hung from a nail, its glass clean. Everything was simple, deliberate. Someone had prepared this place. For who? For him? Buddy circled the room, sniffing every corner, tail wagging cautiously. He gave a low whine, not fearful, curious. Mike's gaze fell on the table again. Beside the bread lay a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. He reached for it with shaking fingers, unfolded it, and read aloud. "If you're cold, this is home. Eat, rest, stay warm. A friend." He stared at the note for a long time. A friend. The words were simple, almost absurd in their kindness. His throat tightened, a lump pressing behind his ribs. For the first time in months, he felt something he couldn't name, something small but alive. He tore a piece of the bread, still soft inside, and handed a bit to Buddy. "Guess we found ourselves a miracle, huh?" Buddy wagged his tail and curled near the stove, eyes half closed in the firelight. Mike sat at the table, the note beside him. His body relaxed, but his mind refused to rest. Who had left this? How long ago? And why did the fire still burn, the bread still warm, when there were no tracks in the snow outside? He looked toward the window. Beyond the frosted glass, the forest stretched endless and silent. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw a shadow moving between the trees. Tall, slow, almost human. But when he blinked, it was gone. The wind moaned against the cabin walls like a whispered warning. Buddy lifted his head, ears pricked, eyes fixed on the door. And somewhere in that moment, between warmth and unease, Mike realized they weren't alone. Chapter 2. The Invisible Hands in Buddy's Nose. By morning, the storm had grown cruel. Snow pressed against the windows, muting the world outside into a ghostly blur. The cabin, small and stubborn against the cold, creaked like an old ship at sea. Mike awoke to the faint crackle of the dying fire and the sound of Buddy's paws padding softly near the door. The golden retriever stood still, nose twitching, tail low, but wagging in small, uncertain motions. "Yeah, I hear it too," Mike murmured, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He listened, only the wind, slipping through cracks in the walls like a thief. Still, something felt off. The fire had burned lower than it should have, even though he had fed it well before sleeping. He knelt to stir the coals, and that's when Buddy let out a soft whine, pawing at a loose floorboard near the hearth. Mike frowned. "What are you up to, Sherlock?" He tugged at the board. It came loose easily, revealing a narrow cavity filled with neatly stacked firewood. Dry, clean, cut to size. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, smiling. "You just found us a gold mine, boy." He gave Buddy a pat on the head. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes bright as embers. Mike rebuilt the fire, coaxing the warmth back to life. The scent of burning pine filled the room again, a smell that somehow made the loneliness bearable. He tore a piece of yesterday's bread for breakfast. Stale now, but still edible. Buddy sat patiently, tail sweeping the floor. "You get half," Mike said, dividing it. When he turned to refill the kettle, he heard the unmistakable sound of chewing. He turned back, half the loaf gone, and Buddy sitting guiltily among a trail of crumbs like evidence at a crime scene. Mike stared, trying to stay stern, but laughter escaped him. "Stealing from a retired firefighter, huh? Guess you're trying to save lives. Your own." Buddy wagged his tail harder, the picture of innocent joy. As the day dragged on, the storm thickened. Snow climbed higher against the windows, blocking what little light remained. Mike checked the chimney and saw smoke curling backward, spilling faintly into the room. He coughed. "Damn it!" Instinct took over, old training resurfacing. He grabbed the poker, cracked open the flue, and used the metal rod to clear the clog of ice forming near the top. A rush of smoke escaped, followed by a sudden clear draft. The air shifted, clean again. "Still got it," he muttered. He wasn't talking to Buddy, or even to himself. He was talking to that younger version of him who had once been proud, useful, strong. The silence afterward pressed heavy. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames until shapes began to form inside them. Faces, old crew members, one face most of all. Jake Turner. Mike blinked hard, forcing the image away. He reached for distraction. Searching the shelves, he found a small drawer wedged under the counter. It creaked open to reveal a stack of folded papers tied with string. The top page was brittle, edges browned by time. His hands shook slightly as he untied it. The writing was slanted, careful. "If you found this place, you've earned it. It's been waiting for you. A friend." He sifted through the others, letters upon letters, all ending the same way. Different ink, different handwriting, same signature. Some were simple thank yous, others small confessions. "You saved my boy. I thought I was done, but I made it here. Still breathing thanks to you." Mike leaned back, exhaling slowly. "So, it's not just us," he whispered. Buddy tilted his head, listening. "We're part of something, pal. Some quiet kindness." He found a half-empty notebook and a stub of pencil in a drawer. His handwriting had always been blocky, the kind of print made for checklists and fire reports, not feelings. But he wrote anyway. "We're safe tonight. The fire's alive. Found this place because my dog believed before I did. If you're reading this, you're not alone. Mike and Buddy." He folded the note, slipped it between two of the old letters, and set the stack back in the drawer. Something eased inside him as he did, like returning a borrowed warmth. Later, while refilling the kettle, he noticed something else. The bread he'd left half-eaten on the table was gone. Not just a crumb, gone. Buddy was asleep by the fire, belly round from earlier crimes, so it wasn't him. Mike scanned the floor. The snow at the door's threshold had melted inward, forming a small wet arc. As if the door had opened, then closed again. He stood frozen. "No way!" He checked the latch. It was still drawn. The window's locked, but the kettle was now steaming. He hadn't lit it yet. Buddy stirred, ears twitching. His head snapped toward the far corner of the room where the wall met shadow. He growled softly, low and uncertain. Mike's heart pounded. He reached for the poker near the stove, gripping it like an old weapon. "Hello?" he called, voice rough. Only the fire answered, crackling like laughter. Minutes passed. Nothing moved. The growl faded. Mike let the poker drop, suddenly exhausted. "Guess we're both losing it," he muttered. Still, when he glanced at the kettle again, it whistled, a long, steady note, as if someone invisible had just turned the heat up for him. He poured a cup of steaming water, eyes flicking toward the shadowed corner once more. "Thanks," he said softly, unsure to whom. Outside, the wind howled against the roof like a sigh. Inside, the flames danced brighter than before, and on the table where the bread had been, there now sat a single pine cone, perfect, symmetrical, placed carefully at the center. Buddy sniffed the air and wagged his tail once, slow and knowing. Mike stared at the pine cone, his pulse quickening. "All right," he whispered. "Now that's just not possible." But deep down, a part of him, the part that had once believed in rescue against all odds, wanted to believe it was. Chapter 3. The voice in the white wind. The third night came sharp and endless. Snow still fell, quieter now, but heavier, as if the sky itself had grown weary, yet refused to stop grieving. The cabin walls groaned under the weight of it. Inside, the fire hissed softly, its glow flickering against Mike's tired face. He had spent the evening writing small notes to keep himself sane. Lists, sketches, a few scattered thoughts about life after firehouses and after guilt. Buddy lay by the door, tail occasionally twitching, nose buried in his paws. Then, without warning, the dog's ears snapped upright. His head lifted, eyes narrowing at the door. A low rumble started in his throat. Not quite a growl, more like a warning drawn from somewhere old and instinctive. Mike looked up. "What is it, Bud?" The fire popped, sending a crack through the silence. Then came it, the faintest sound beneath the wind. A voice, distant, fragile, but unmistakably human. "Help!" Mike was already on his feet before his mind caught up. He grabbed his coat, old and patched, and shoved his boots on. The air outside hit him like shattered glass. "Stay close," he ordered Buddy, though the dog was already at the front, pawing the snow. The voice came again, fainter this time, carried off by the wind's howl. Mike followed it, flashlight beam cutting through the storm like a knife. After maybe 10 minutes of trudging, he saw the dark outline of a car half buried in snow at the edge of the woods. Its headlights were dimming, one flickering weakly like a dying pulse. Mike pushed forward. Buddy barked once, circling ahead, and then Mike saw them, two figures huddled by the open driver's door. The first was a woman, mid-30s, tall but slight, wrapped in a coat that wasn't nearly thick enough for mountain winter. Her hair, once auburn, was tangled and rimmed with frost. Her face was pale, lips bluish, but her eyes, hazel, wide with both fear and determination, locked onto him the moment his light found her. She looked like someone used to carrying too much weight for too long. Her name, he'd learned soon enough, was Sarah Miller, a single mother on her way to Denver for work, after months of layoffs. Her car had slipped on ice and buried itself in the drift. Beside her was a boy, maybe 8 or 9, small, bundled in an oversized coat that nearly swallowed him. His nose was red, his hands tucked under his arms for warmth. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered, though his teeth chattered with every word. His name was Eli, thin but bright-eyed, the kind of child who looked at the world as if it still owed him kindness. And near the car's back tire, trembling on stiff legs, was an old Labrador with a graying muzzle, Molly, her cloudy eyes darting between the boy and the stranger approaching through the snow. Her tail wagged weakly, torn between fear and hope. Mike's voice came out hoarse from the cold. "You folks all right?" He already knew the answer. He crouched beside Sarah, checking her hands. They were icy white. "You've got frostbite starting," he muttered, taking off his gloves and giving them to her. "How long have you been out here?" "Since afternoon," Sarah rasped. "We thought the storm would pass." Mike nodded grimly. "It didn't. You can't stay here. There's a cabin about a mile back. You can make it if you move slow." She hesitated, glancing at her son and the old dog. "I don't think—" "I'm not asking," Mike interrupted gently. "I've pulled people out of worse. You just need to trust me." Something in his tone, calm, solid, the kind that carried a lifetime of saving others, broke through her doubt. She nodded once. "Okay." He took Eli in his arms, light as a whisper, and gestured for Sarah to hold on to his shoulder. Buddy led the way, pushing through snow that reached Mike's knees. The retriever kept looking back, eyes glowing in the flashlight's beam, making sure none of them fell behind. Molly trudged last, her breath short but steady. The climb back felt endless. Sarah stumbled once, catching herself against Mike's arm. "You're a firefighter?" she asked between breaths. "Was," he replied. "Now, I'm just a guy trying to keep a promise to a stranger." "What promise?" He almost smiled. "To keep the fire alive." By the time they reached the cabin, the sky had turned from black to deep gray. The wind roared down the ridge, slamming into them like a living thing. Mike forced the door open, ushering them inside. The blast of warm air felt like resurrection. "Sit by the fire," he said quickly, stripping his gloves and reaching for the kettle. He set water to heat and grabbed the old wool blanket from the bed, wrapping it around Sarah and Eli. Buddy paced the floor, restless, tail stiff as he sniffed near the roof beams. The wind outside was picking up again, pressing harder against the walls. A deep cracking sound split the air, wood groaning above them. Mike's head snapped up just as part of the roof caved in under the snow's weight. He lunged forward, shoving Sarah and Eli away. The beam crashed down beside him, grazing his shoulder and catching his ankle. The pain was immediate, sharp as lightning. Buddy barked wildly, leaping at the beam. Mike clenched his jaw and shoved it off, his breath coming ragged. "Everyone okay?" he gasped. Sarah's face was white with shock, but she nodded. "We're fine. You're hurt." "Nothing I haven't had worse," he lied, trying to stand. His ankle throbbed like fire under skin. "We need to patch that hole." Sarah looked up, panic flashing in her eyes. "How?" Mike pointed to a pile of planks near the wall. "We cover it. Fast." Between the two of them, they lifted the smaller boards, pushing them against the broken section. Mike hammered nails with the back of an old wrench, sweat mixing with snow on his forehead. When the wind eased, he collapsed near the stove, panting. Outside, the storm screamed and clawed, but the cabin held. Inside, the fire still burned. Sarah knelt beside him, gently tightening the bandage she'd torn from her scarf around his ankle. "You shouldn't have gone out there," she whispered. He looked at Buddy, curled protectively near the door, eyes half open, ever alert. "Someone had to," he said softly. "That's what we do, right, Bud?" The dog's tail thumped once in reply. Moments later, Buddy lifted his head again, ears twitching. He stood, nose toward the back wall, then padded slowly to the corner, sniffing. Without warning, he started pawing at the stones near the hearth, whining. Mike frowned. "What's he got now?" A faint sound echoed beneath the floor, soft, rhythmic, like trickling water. Buddy dug faster. Sarah leaned closer, eyes wide. "Is that—" Mike's heart slowed. "Running water," he breathed. "A spring." Buddy stopped, tail wagging, tongue lolling happily. Mike stared at the dog and laughed once, breathless. "Well, look at that! You just found us a miracle." But even as he said it, a strange feeling crawled down his spine. The sound of water grew louder, clearer, as if it wasn't under the cabin anymore, but whispering around it. The wind died, the fire flickered, and somewhere beyond the door, a distant howl rolled through the valley. Long, low, almost human. Chapter 4. The open road and the passing flame. Morning came with a silence so complete it felt like grace. The storm had broken during the night, leaving behind a world carved from glass and light. Snow draped the pines like silk, and the air was sharp enough to sting the lungs, yet clean in a way that made every breath feel earned. Mike stood by the cabin door, ankle bandaged and stiff, watching his breath rise in soft clouds. Buddy bounded ahead, tail high, golden fur blazing against the white. Sarah and Eli were asleep near the fire, curled under blankets with Molly snoring softly between them. Mike smiled. He hadn't seen such peace on anyone's face in years. When the sun lifted higher, Buddy began to bark, short and excited bursts that echoed down the valley. "You found something again, huh?" Mike said. The dog darted toward a narrow path now visible under the melting snow. It sloped gently downward, the faint tracks of an old logging road buried beneath the drifts. Mike followed, leaning on a stick for balance. Half a mile down, the faint rumble of machinery cut through the stillness, a sound so strange and human it almost startled him. Then, through the glare, he saw a snowplow, orange paint dulled by years, grinding slowly up the pass. Mike waved both arms. The plow slowed, engine growling before coming to a halt. A man stepped out, tall, broad, and weathered. His beard was thick and streaked with white, his nose red from cold. "You're a long way off the main road," he called out, voice gravelly but not unkind. "Yeah," Mike said, limping closer. "Name's Mike Carter. We've got 3 people and 2 dogs stranded back at a cabin up the ridge." The man squinted, studying him. "You the one the ranger station's been hearing about? Said there was smoke where there shouldn't be any?" "Guess that'd be us," Mike replied with a half grin. The man chuckled. "Well, I'll be damned. Name's Jake Hammond, county maintenance. Used to be a miner till the company folded. Been running this plow since '08. You folks picked a hell of a week for camping." His tone carried the humor of a man who had seen too many winters to be surprised by human stubbornness. "Wasn't much of a choice," Mike said, "but we found warmth, and some old magic maybe." Jake scratched his beard. "Magic, huh? Around here, we call that survival." Still, there was something curious in his eyes. "Come on, I'll take you into town once we dig through." By the time they returned to the cabin, the others were ready to leave. Sarah helped Eli into Jake's truck, her face pale but alive again. She turned to Mike, words caught between gratitude and disbelief. "You saved us, all of us." Mike shook his head. "The cabin saved us. Someone before us kept it ready. We just kept the fire going." Jake drove them slowly through the carved road, passing the half-buried pines. When they reached Evergreen, the small mountain, town was buzzing. Locals clearing roofs, kids shoveling driveways. News spread fast in places like this. The story of a stranger's cabin with a fire still burning traveled from the gas station while to the diner before sunset. Inside Linda's diner, warmth and chatter filled the air. Linda herself, a stout woman in her late 50s, with silver hair tied in a bun and a voice that could slice through any crowd, poured coffee into chipped mugs. "So, you're the guy they pulled out of the hills," she said, eyeing Mike up and down. "And this the DogHero?" Buddy sat obediently at Mike's feet, red scarf freshly tied by Eli. The boy had insisted it made him look official. Linda leaned over the counter and scratched Buddy's chin. "Good boy," she murmured. "We're starting a supply basket up front. Blankets, canned beans, gloves. You tell that mountain cabin there'll be more company soon. The idea took root like a spark catching dry wood. Within days, the townspeople began donating flannel shirts, thermoses, hand warmers. Jake drove supplies up when clearing the trail. Linda packed them with cookies for morale. Sarah, before heading east for work, left a note pinned to Mike's truck. You were right. The fire deserves to keep burning. Thank you for reminding me. Mike's ankle healed slower than his heart. By the next month, he was back walking normally, spending mornings repairing old chimneys and checking fire alarms for anyone who asked. It started small, helping the elderly couple on Pine Street replace a faulty heater, but soon he was volunteering with the local fire station again, part-time. The chief, a barrel-chested man named Ralph Dempsey, had served with Mike years ago. He looked the same, just a little grayer, a little slower. Could use a guy who knows how to calm a crisis, Ralph said, handing him a badge. Don't think you ever stopped being one of us. Mike didn't argue. Something in him had thawed since that night. He spent weekends driving up the ridge with Buddy, checking the cabin, stacking fresh wood, refilling lanterns. Sometimes he found new notes, scribbled words from hikers or drifters, made it through. Thank you, friend. Each one folded neatly into the drawer with the others. One afternoon, standing by the stove, he said aloud, "What do you think, Bud? One cabin's good, but what if there were two?" Buddy tilted his head, tail flicking. "Yeah," Mike said. "Another shelter lower down, somewhere easier to reach." A few weeks later, with Jake's help and Ralph's old gear, they began building it. Nothing fancy, just sturdy wood, a stove, and a mailbox for letters. Mike painted the words above the door himself, "For those who wander." By early winter, the second warm house, or as locals called it, was ready. Buddy, now the town's unofficial mascot, patrolled proudly with his red scarf, inspecting each nail as if he were foreman of the job. Linda brought up the first box of donations, declaring, "Every traveler deserves soup and socks, in that order." The day the stove was lit for the first time, Mike stood outside, snow falling lightly on his shoulders. He watched the chimney breathe its thin gray plume into the sky and felt something old inside him settle, like a promise fulfilled. Buddy sat beside him, looking pleased, ears twitching to the rhythm of crackling fire inside. "Looks good, doesn't it, pal?" Mike said. Buddy barked once, short and sure. As the flame rose steady, Mike noticed a folded scrap of paper left on the doorstep. No footprints led to it. He picked it up, heart already tightening before reading. "You've done well, friend. The warmth has found new hands." The signature was the same as ever, a friend. He looked out over the snowy valley, wind whispering through the trees, and smiled, not from surprise, but recognition. Some fires never really go out. They just wait for the next set of hands to tend them. Chapter 5. The thaw and a warm ending. The mountains softened with the coming spring. The snow that once smothered every sound now melted into song. Water rushing through the ravines, trickling beneath roots, whispering under the earth. The air carried the scent of wet pine and thawed soil, and from the hilltops, smoke from the two warm houses rose gently, twin ribbons curling toward a forgiving sky. A year had passed since the storm that had nearly claimed them, and the valley had changed, grown warmer somehow, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Mike Carter walked the familiar path up to the first cabin, boots muddy from the thaw, Buddy trotting close at his side. The golden retriever was older now, muzzle lighter with silver, but his gait remained proud. His red scarf, faded, patched twice by Linda, still flapped like a flag of duty. Buddy stopped often to sniff the breeze, as if making sure the mountains were still breathing properly. The first cabin looked the same, but lived in. The logs were scrubbed clean, roof repaired, and by the door hung a small brass sign Jake had carved, "The First Fire." The mailbox beside it was overflowing with folded letters. Mike took a few out to read. They came from hikers, drifters, travelers from towns miles away, some short, some long, all ending with the same two words, "A friend." He smiled, tucking them back carefully. The second cabin down the ridge, "For those who wander," now glowed each night, lanterns flickering like steady hearts. Between the two shelters stretched a trail beaten down by boots and paws alike. It had become something of a legend in Evergreen, the path of warmth. Back in town, Mike had found something close to peace. He now lived in a modest room above Linda's diner, a narrow space with a desk, a wood stove, and a window that caught the morning sun. From there, he could see the hills where Buddy still made his morning patrols. He'd taken a permanent position as fire safety advisor for the Evergreen District, inspecting chimneys, teaching school kids how to stop, drop, and roll. His hair had gone whiter, and his limp stayed with him like an old friend, but his eyes were brighter than they had been in years. Retirement number 2, Ralph had joked at his rehiring, slapping his back so hard it nearly knocked him into a pile of helmets. Buddy, for his part, had found a new calling too. At Linda's urging, and after a surprisingly thorough temperament test from a local vet named Dr. Paul Everett, a calm, balding man in his early 40s with kind gray eyes and the patience of someone who listened more than he spoke, Buddy was officially certified as a therapy dog. Every Tuesday morning, Mike and Buddy visited the old fire station and the Evergreen Care Home. The residents there adored him. Buddy would pad softly between wheelchairs and walkers, placing his head on trembling knees, sighing contentedly as tired hands brushed through his fur. For those few minutes, the world seemed smaller, quieter, kind. Mike often sat nearby, drinking coffee from a paper cup, watching as Buddy worked his silent magic. "You do more good than half the preachers in this town," he'd whisper. Buddy's tail thumped once, slow and modest. The town had changed too. Linda expanded her diner, adding a wall of framed letters from the warm houses. Each one was laminated, protected like sacred relics. Jake, still running his plow, spent his free days driving supplies up the ridge. Sarah and Eli visited every winter break. Molly, older but alive, her fur snow-white now. Eli, taller, freckles blooming across his face, had taken to calling Mike Uncle Fire, a nickname that stuck so hard it found its way onto the diner's chalkboard menu. Uncle Fire's Chili Special. That spring, Evergreen decided to honor the symbol that had brought them all together. The town council, led by Mayor Donna Reeves, a tall, silver-haired woman known for her sharp mind and love of stray animals, commissioned a small park monument, the Buddy Bench and Warm Box. The bench, carved from oak, stood beside a small iron stove where people could leave notes, mittens, or stories for others to find. On the day of the unveiling, sunlight spilled over the town square, reflecting off melting puddles. The whole town gathered, Jake in his work jacket, Linda with her apron still dusted with flour, Ralph in his old fire chief coat, Sarah and Eli waving from the front row. The mayor gave a brief speech about kindness, community, and the fire that never truly dies. Then it was Mike's turn. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane, the paper in his hand trembling just slightly. "I used to think fire was only meant to destroy," he began. "But I've learned that it can save too. All it needs is someone to tend it, someone to pass it on." He looked down at Buddy, who sat like a soldier beside him. "This dog saved my life, not just from the cold, but from myself. And this town, you all kept the fire burning." He paused, eyes glistening. "So, if you ever find yourself lost, cold, or just tired, remember, there's a place for you. There's always a light somewhere waiting." The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. The mayor stepped forward, scissors in hand, to cut the red ribbon. But before she could, Buddy lunged playfully and bit the ribbon clean in half. The crowd burst into laughter. "Guess he wanted to do the honors," Mike chuckled, scratching Buddy's head. The retriever barked twice, circled the bench, and flopped down in the sunlight, tail sweeping across the ground like a golden metronome. That evening, when the crowd had gone, Mike lingered by the bench. The sky was turning lavender, the air crisp but gentle. He could see the faint glow of the cabins far up the ridge, fires burning steady through dusk. He reached down and ran a hand through Buddy's fur. "You did good, pal," he murmured. "Real good." Buddy lifted his head, eyes soft and wise, and let out a single bark that echoed across the quiet town. Mike smiled at the sound. It carried like a promise through the cooling air. Somewhere, a lantern flickered to life. Somewhere else, a stranger found warmth waiting. And in that moment, as the mountains exhaled the last of their winter breath, Mike thought, goodness doesn't need a name, only someone to keep it lit. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or wings. They come quietly, wrapped in small acts of kindness. A warm cabin, a shared loaf of bread, a loyal dog who refuses to leave your side. Maybe that's how God moves through this world. Not in lightning, but in people and creatures who carry his warmth where it's needed most. Mike and Buddy's story reminds us that faith isn't always found in churches or chapels, but in the way we reach out to others, the way we keep someone else's fire burning when their strength runs low. Every smile, every gentle word, every helping hand is proof that heaven still breathes through us. So, if you've ever doubted that miracles exist, look again. In the quiet mercy of strangers, in the loyal heart of an animal, in the moment you choose kindness over comfort. That's where God hides his light. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Leave a comment about a moment when kindness found you. Subscribe for more stories of faith, love, and second chances. And may God bless you. May he guide your steps through every storm, and may the fire of compassion in your heart never go out.